Whenever any game has mod support and a devoted modding community, anime mods are inevitable, and Slay the Spire is no exception to that. In fact, it might just be the prime example of this rule, with the sheer percentage of anime mods far outnumbering any other modded game that I've seen. I'm honestly not much of an anime fan myself, but I don't think you do need to be in order to enjoy these mods, especially since some of them are just super cool and have way more content to play with than I ever expected. I've installed and played over 25 different anime themed or inspired mods, which has driven me to the brink of insanity. But I have used my last few sane moments to create this video going over that I think are the most well made, each in their own way. Character mods are generally the most common and popular types of mods in this game, so we'll be taking a look at a few, but there are also some pretty amazing expansion-like content mods that we'll be looking at as well. Just keep in mind that each of these characters are balanced and played within their own bubble. One of the most popular and one of my favorite character mods is the Animator, which is objectively the most anime of all anime mods that this game has. So I thought it would be the best one to start out with. This mod kind of disguises itself as a simple character mod, but it is just way more than that once you look deeper into it. The first thing that you'll probably notice when you install the mod is the different character select screen that has options for different starter decks, and multiple challenges for each deck. These starter decks unlock with level, and are each based on a different popular anime series, improving one defend and strike card, and changing your 2 starter cards depending on your choice. It's been pretty tough for me to understand the identity of these series, but I still think it's an amazing idea. And it just gets even more awesome when we start looking at the classes, mechanics, like synergies and improved card rewards. The other thing you'll notice is the 3 different starter relics. The first one, Living Picture, is your actual starting relic that just draws you a card each time you synergize, once per turn. And to synergize a card, your last played card that turn has to be from the same anime series as the card that you're currently playing, which you can easily tell by looking above the card's name and when it glows. Synergizing is a super important mechanic with this class. You'll come across a lot of different cards that have their own super powerful effects when they synergize with their own series. There are 14 different anime series and 170 cards, which would make it super hard to actually create a deck that synergizes often if it wasn't for the other 2 starter relics that you get. Purging Stone is an amazing idea that allows you to banish cards from card rewards to never be shown again in your run, which re-rolls that reward to a different card. It gains charges via combat up to 3, and is obviously super useful to get rid of those pesky cards that don't go well with your archetype or the series that you're trying to mainly get synergies with. The Missing Piece will give you a choice of 3 different card rewards from 3 different series every 4th combat, which gives you much more agency on what kind of deck that you're building, which is pretty awesome. Also, when you're looking at all of these cards, make sure you either hold right click or press Ctrl to see their extra effect. That's right, almost every single card in this mod has 2 separate effects. That's 170 cards, and about like 150 of them just have a different effect, so that's almost like 300 different effects on all the cards. Usually the more basic effect as its first text, and then a conditional, more interesting effect on its second text. There's a quick legend of badges to the right of every card reward screen that visually explains what the condition is for each card's extra effect. This character has basically every archetype that you can think of, and many new ones split throughout the 14 different anime series. You have strength scaling, orb channeling, poison stacking, exhausting, and more that you'd find in some of the vanilla classes, but there are also many new keywords that create their own unique archetypes, like Martial Artist or Spellcaster cards uniquely scaling with either Dexterity or Focus, Throwing Knives which are like Shivs with a randomized debuff, Force Agility and Intellect which each give you temporary Strength, Dexterity or Focus, and it can be affected through some super interesting cards that I'll show on screen. And that's just a few of the new mechanics and keywords. There are much more, but you should really play the mod and discover it for yourself. All of this stuff brings a whole new layer of complexity to the game that the vanilla classes or any simple just class mod by itself really doesn't have, and it makes for a really fun and engaging and high skill cap character to play. It also seems pretty decently balanced, and while there are obviously going to be some issues, I didn't try too hard to break the mod. I haven't accidentally run into infinite combos like I kept doing with some of the other character mods that I've been testing, so that is a pretty good sign. And did you think that this was simply just a character mod? No, it also adds a completely new act to replace Act 4 if you choose. I'll show a brief glimpse of what this looks like. I don't want to spoil it too much because it's meant to be sort of like a trophy that you unlock and play through, and it's really what this whole entire mod leads up to. Speaking of new acts, let's talk about the Gensokyo Act Mod that can replace Act 1 based on the Toho project, as about 40% of Slay the Spire mods are. Act mods are my favorite kind of mods to play when they are well done, and Gensokyo is done extremely well, with a great art style, full animations, many well-designed monsters to fight, a whole bunch of random events that offer you brand new interesting relics and cards, and of course some awesome boss fights. When I say these fights are well designed, I really do mean it. I think that the enemy design and mechanics are the best part of this mod, way better than any other mods that I've played that add new enemies for you to fight. You have your basic hallway fights, like the Python who starts by constricting you, alternating between attacks and more constriction, and Kidemas, who are almost like the slime replacement monster for this act, who all have different effects based on their color. Then you have the advanced hallway fights like Vengeful Spirit, who puts curses into your deck and gains strength based on the amount of curses you have, and the Corrupted Treant that will deal 4 damage to you every time you deal 15 damage to him. These obviously aren't all of the hallway fights that you'll encounter, but they're just some examples. Then you have 3 really cool elites, including Strongest Fairy, who starts with -10 strength, is immortal, and has 3 pretty weak immortal minions, but when her minions die, she will gain 1 strength, and then she'll retreat once she reaches positive strength, winning the combat for you, which is a really interesting fight, and changes up your deck choices and playstyle very much. Another amazingly designed elite is the Tanuki Disguiser, who will start off as a single sentry, but once you damage it enough, her disguise will wear off and she'll show you her true form and transform you into a random creature that can't deal damage for 1 turn as she shapeshifts back throughout the vanilla Act 1 elites that we're used to, all with their same abilities. And of course, there are awesome boss fights, as most Act mods have. The 3 bosses added in this act are some of the craziest and most interesting I've ever seen. I don't want to give them all away here for obvious reasons, but the one is the Shrine Maiden of Paradise, who summons a whole bunch of these yin-yang orbs that'll move towards you every turn. And this fight involves these lanes. You can move your character up a lane by playing a skill, or down a lane by playing an attack. If you end your turn in the same lane as an attacking orb, you will take the full damage of that orb, but if you aren't in a lane with an orb, you will not take damage from any of the attacking orbs. The boss also puts a debuff on you that forces you to discard a card at the start of your turn, and it will stack this debuff every few turns, which makes you have to kill her within a turn limit before you start discarding your whole hand and the fight becomes impossible. The other bosses are extremely cool as well, but you're going to have to go fight them yourself and figure out how they work. All of these monsters I talked about are just a fraction of what this mod has. Like I said, the design of these monsters is the strongest suit of this mod by far. But then you have the new events that you'd find in this act, and some are okay. I do like a few that I'll show on screen right now, but others are the one criticism that I do have for this mod. Some of the events give relics or cards that are just way out of left field, broken and unbalanced, and they can mess with the rest of your run because this is an Act 1. There's multiple different urban legend cards that you can add to your deck via events, which do some pretty absolutely ridiculous things, like gaining intangible for every 10 cards played, gaining 4 dexterity and 4 plated armor for 2 mana, rip footworks, and some others that I'll show on screen. Other than that one complaint about the balance aspect, I really do love this mod. It's really amazing, the fights are well designed, the art style is great, and I really recommend you check it out at least a few times to see what these monsters are. Now let's talk about another class mod based on a little card game and anime series that you may have heard of called Yu-Gi-Oh! This is the Duelist Class Mod, and just like the last class mod we looked at, this class is much more than just a simple class mod. Remember how I said that with the Animator Class 170 card pool was a lot? Well, I hope you're sitting down for this because the Duelist mod adds over 1400 cards, all based off of real Yu-Gi-Oh cards that exist in the physical card game. This is absolutely insane, but on top of that, there are over 80 new relics and over 50 new potions, making this mod probably one of the most objectively content-filled mods out there. I was in shock when I learned just how much stuff this mod adds. A pool of 1400 cards would make it impossible to build a consistent deck, but this is handled quite well, with different playable decks and the ability to customize your personal card pool to basically make your own class. There are just so many different decks with this, and each deck is like its own separate class because it's not only changing your starting cards, but it's changing your entire card pool of what's available during the game, which would be separated through different archetypes. Although there is some overlap and every deck has access to the basic card pool, and like mentioned, you can customize and save custom card pools, which is pretty awesome. The card pool customization that this offers is something that I'm a huge fan of. Here's me creating and playing my own deck that offers warriors, dragons, and aqua monsters. It's not that great, but it's a lot of fun knowing that I'm the one who made it, and it really reminds me of the whole player fantasy of normal deck building games like Hearthstone or even Yu-Gi-Oh itself. The main mechanic this class makes use of is summoning and tributing monsters, just like the actual card game. Any card with a summon tag will summon that many monsters to a maximum of 5, and the increment tag will increase that maximum, and then any card with the tribute tag will sacrifice a certain amount of monsters to play. There are several different monster types that you can summon with their own effects, some as simple as rock monsters giving 2 block per each summoned at the end of your turn, or something more complex like tributing warriors for another warrior will let you switch into any of the new stances or old stances that this mod has. So of course, with like 1400 cards, comes a whole bunch of new mechanics like these stances that I just mentioned, a whole load of different orbs, each with their own inversions like lava, fire, blaze, smoke, mist, alien, and way more. There's just so many new tags and mechanics. There's overload that gives you an effect if the card is in your hand at the end of the turn. And beyond that, there's obviously way more new tags and new mechanics in the game. I've climbed through Ascension quicker than I have on any other classes with the Duelist, so either I'm really good at this class, or it's a bit unbalanced. It does feel pretty unbalanced for early Ascension levels, for sure, and that's to be expected when you add these many cards and relics into one class, but there is a challenge mode beyond Ascension 20 with multiple levels of its own that modifies the game in certain ways specific to the Duelist class, like replacing your tokens with explosive tokens that damage you when tributed, or not being able to play summon cards if your summons are full. Something that you've probably noticed is the character model, which is super low quality and kind of looks like Yugi is T-posing. It doesn't bother me personally that much, but I know that others would have more of a problem with it. But other than that, I love the mod. I really do recommend it, especially if you've ever been a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, since it just has so much content packed into one class. The last mod is one of my favorites, being Lobotomy, which is based off of the Lobotomy Corporation video game that I haven't played or heard of before this mod, but it has an anime style, and I'm pretty sure Toho Project is also a game, so I'm going to count this as an anime mod for this list. This mod gets pretty crazy. I really recommend playing through on the vanilla classes with no other mods installed, since that's how it's meant to be played through, and it's more of a journey that persists through multiple runs rather than a quick one run type of thing like the other mods are. To start off, you will need to pick the new option in the beginning to take the bucket, which is the relic that basically activates the entire mod. While you're carrying the bucket, you'll get an extra set of card rewards at the end of each combat, full of these abnormality cards. Abnormality cards have all of their information hidden at first, and you have to research it via this currency called PE. You earn PE by winning combats with abnormalities in your deck. The more abnormalities, the more PE that you get. So you do have to start off with unresearched cards first in order to actually get the points to research them. And once you research these cards, the information is unlocked for every single run you do in the future. These abnormality cards are pretty crazy, and when I say pretty crazy, I mean you'll literally go crazy trying to figure out what these cards do. I don't want to give away too many of these, since the whole point of it is to research them yourself and figure out what they do, which is a lot of fun. but I'll name a few to give you an idea at the pure insanity that these cards bring to the game. Here's an uncommon called La Luna. The first research tells you that once drawn it'll start playing a song called Luna Sonata, which lasts about 20 seconds and changes the background music of the game. The second research tells you that you'll gain 1 strength and dexterity while this song is playing, so that's pretty powerful, right? But then you get to the third level of research, and you learn that the third time the song plays during combat, it'll last longer, double the stats that you gain, but it will deal 2 damage to you every 5 seconds that the song's playing, which puts you on a timer, and will basically kill you if the fight lasts too long. Here's a rare card called Censored, which is something that I thought was amazing the first time I got it until I researched more and learned why it kept ending my runs and ruining my combats. The first thing you learn about it is that you'll heal for 40% of all damage received as long as this is in your deck, which is just extremely powerful. Then you learn that you can play the card to exhaust a random card to heal 12 HP, which is pretty nice. Then things start getting scary once you learn that you'll be weakened or vulnerable 3 times once drawn. And then lastly, if your debuffs all equal up to higher than 6, which most likely it will because of the last effect we talked about, every other card in your hand will be exhausted when you draw Censored. Which sucks, because that would usually make it so Censored is the only card in your deck after a while, which will ruin your combat and make things impossible. It's important to note that all of these abnormality cards still do all of their effects if they're not researched, it's just that you don't know what their effects are until you research them. So before that, you're kind of playing a guessing game. You unlock little pieces of information of what cards do, but it's a super important thing to actually learn what these cards do, since some of them will straight up kill you, or exhaust your hands, or buff enemies. These abnormalities are really just a tool for the trials that the mod will put you through with the whole ordeal system. If you pick the bucket, some combats will have a chance to be replaced with new enemy types that are usually extremely tough compared to anything else that you'll be fighting at that point. And these fights will reward you with special Lobotomy relics. You don't know what the relics do until you receive them, but there's no research for them beyond that. Some examples of these relics include Flesh Idol, that damages you for the first 4 turns, heals you for the next turns, but then straight up kills you at the end of your 18th turn. And then there's Backwards Clock, which has an active ability to record your current state of time, and then the second active ability that returns you back to that state of time with all of your health, all of your cards, basically everything put back, and then removes the relic. Once you research 30% of the abnormalities, you unlock a new option to challenge the Lobotomy Corporation, which turns the ordeals white, which replaces the monster pool to these insanely strong monsters that want to kill you and will absolutely destroy you. Doing this is key to unlocking the true ending and spawning the boss that you need to kill. There's also more unlocks, of course, like a whole new playable character, and I think there's actually a second whole new playable character as an Easter egg I read a comment on, but didn't unlock myself. I don't want to spoil things for you anyways, since the mod is all about uncovering the mystery throughout the game. I really like this mod, it's really well made, and its difficulty is pretty ruthless, perhaps even a bit too ruthless. The ordeals that you fight aren't really that interesting, they're just monsters that have very, very high damage numbers and an occasional buff or debuff. But they're all animated and they all look pretty cool. The final boss is insanely hard. I haven't even been able to beat it on some of the infinite combo decks that I got on the Duelist mod, like I mentioned before. So if you want to give the mod a try and install it yourself, you'll know that you're a god gamer if you are able to beat it quickly. So here's the end of the video, and this has been way more than I wanted it to be. I originally wanted it to be like 10 to 15 minutes, but if you did sit through this for about 23 minutes, thank you very much, I appreciate it, and I hope you did like the video. There's just so much to talk about with these mods, and just modding and Slay the Spire in general. There were so many mods that I wanted to talk about in this video, but I couldn't because I didn't want the video to be like 15 minutes long. But I probably will be talking about them in the future, because there are just so many cool mods. You really need to check these out if you haven't already. Once again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate a subscribe. If not, whatever though, that's okay too. But thank you and have a nice day.